So we're going to go ahead and get started with our next speaker. So we're going to bring Julia Macalaster to the stage. She is head of strategy and growth with Def Method, and she's going to help us get aligned and track our digital marketing efforts. And so please give a round of applause for Julia Macalaster. Julia, you have the power. It's all yours if you want to use it.
Really exciting.
Yeah, you can place your water.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. No? Do you need a different mic?
It's that dang power switch.
Oh, power switch. Oh, all right. Wait. Put my big mic down. Can you hear me now? There we go. Awesome. All right. So today we will be talking about agility with the big picture in mind. But essentially what that means is we're going to be talking about process and how to hit some of your goals for the next quarter, for the next year. So if you saw them talking about AI, if you saw them talking about blockchain, then you realize that that's something that you want to explore with your team. That's your new goal. We'll be talking about how to execute on that. So I work at a company called Def Method. We are an agile software consultancy. So what that means is that the majority of my colleagues are software engineers, and all of my colleagues are agile engineers. And what that means is that we use a certain process. It's called an agile methodology, and it's a process that's used by software engineers around the world to effectively deliver products over a period of time by creating quick iterations and by launching smaller pieces of that product over time. So why that matters is because today we'll be talking about how I've learned to take some of those processes that the engineers on my team use and apply them for my marketing team. Someone from the marketing team here, Kathy, with me today. So I lead up the marketing team at Def Method, and we've found a way to apply some of those processes to our own marketing efforts. So before we start out, I'd like to just tell a quick story. So when I first arrived at college, I was absolutely thrilled. I was out from under the thumb of my parents, my teachers, my coaches, and I finally, on a daily basis, could decide what I was going to do and how I'd plan out my day. But I actually had a very key learning experience, and I remember it very distinctly. It was the art of Egyptian. It was Egyptian art history, and that was one of my first classes freshman year. And as we came to the close of the first semester, the professor assigned a 15-page paper. I felt pretty okay with that. I had written 15-page papers in the past. I had a plan in mind, and I was pretty confident that I could execute on it. But somehow I found myself in the basement of the library at midnight before the paper was due, staring at a blank screen. But that's not to say that I didn't have a plan. I did have a plan. I planned that 2 weeks prior to that date, I would go to the library and I would take out the book that I needed from the library. The issue was, when I went to the library, someone else had taken out that book already. So that was my plan, so I stuck with it. So I decided I would just wait for that person to return the book. So they didn't return the book until a week later. I finally walk back to the library, get my little book, and I check it out, and I get a text from my friend that a party's happening. Freshman year of college, of course, I had to check out what a college party looked like. So I go to the party, I drink a little bit too much, I get too hungover. So there I am back at the library late on Sunday afternoon, finally diving into the book that I've acquired from the library. And I find out that this book, in fact, does not have the information that I need. So I give that book back, I start searching for other books, and I find some great resources that I can use for my paper. And I find them really fascinating. I remember it was on this Egyptian god set, and he's this evil god. It was fascinating. And so I end up reading about 3 or 4 books on this god set, and somehow find myself at midnight staring at a blank screen the night before the paper's due. So the issue with what happened during this experience is I had a plan, but I wasn't planning. I wasn't changing my process as more information was acquired over time. And so what I had to learn over my college experience was With people not telling me what to do on a daily basis, I had to figure out how to plan over time and how to hit those goals that are in the future by changing my process, by refactoring my process as I went along and as I acquired new information. So I actually experienced a similar experience when I first started managing my first marketing team. Again, I, in my career prior, had people telling me what to do on a daily basis. And it was pretty great. You arrive on Monday and someone would give you a list of things that you had to execute on. And then when I became a manager for the first time, I realized that I had a team looking at me, asking me what they should do on a daily basis, and I had to get us to our end goals, which is a bit more difficult. And I learned from my college experiences that this strategy for planning, it doesn't work. This linear strategy of, oh, I'll set my plan at the beginning of the quarter and we will deliver it. It's very optimistic. I wish it could work, it doesn't. And so what I learned over time from managing my own teams was how to integrate this process, this iterative process that kind of goes around and around as you go through your quarter, so that ultimately you are delivering the goals that you've set out for yourself by essentially using information that you acquire along the way. So this is the process that we'll be going through today. In no ways is this a perfect process. This has worked for our marketing team at Def Method, but I encourage you to kind of pull pieces and parts from it, retrofit it for your own team. That's pretty much what we've done by retrofitting the Agile process for our marketing team. So the first step, the most key step of this process is to set your goals. I know this might sound silly, but at the same time, it would be silly to ask for directions if you don't have a destination in mind. Similarly, if I just said to my team, if I said to Kathy, we're going to start doing Facebook ads, it would be similar to saying, we're going to take the highway. Where are we going? So really, our first step is really knowing why are we taking those routes, why are we taking those roads, where are we trying to get? So we have 3 different steps that we use for setting our goals. We do this at the beginning of every quarter, and we, again, readdress these goals at the beginning of every quarter. Again, it's an iterative process. It goes round and round. So the first step of this process is we build out our user personas. I don't think this is anything new to any of you in this room, but it is very important to break down who is the user that you're trying to target. What do they look like? If you look at this spreadsheet that we use, it's very B2B focused. If you're B2C, it might look a little different than this. But really, it's trying to hone in on who are we targeting here? Who are we talking to? We try to keep our user personas to 3 to 5, no more than 5, because it should be a close enough group that you can effectively target all of your different user personas. And we try to get as much information on each group as possible. So the first step is kind of building out this spreadsheet of user personas. Second, and this is a very important step, you have to think about their lens. So you have these 3 to 5 user personas built out, and really the next step is thinking about how they're looking at your company. Not at what you think they should know, but how are they looking at your company. So I'll give you guys a second to just take a look at this image up on the board. I'm sure you're wondering why I have a random image of a woman on my slide deck. And then look at this, and if you could just say what you see. Do you see a young woman or do you see an old woman? Okay. So I'll come over here. Sorry for the guys in that second room. If you look at it, you can actually see an old woman here. Here's her lips. Here's her big hook nose. Right? Woo, sorry, I almost tripped there. Do you guys see it, or do you want me to come show you over here? All right. Just run across the page here. We see the old woman here. She has her lips here, and this is her nose. Right? So I'm not surprised that a lot of you guys saw the young woman first, and that's because you're conditioned to see the young woman first. You were primed with a young woman photo, and then you were shown this image. If you had been primed with this photo, you most likely would have seen the old woman. This series of photos is taken from the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And really what it's showing is that you always have to consider that someone might be looking at your company through a different lens. Even though when you first saw the image, you probably were convinced that it was just this beautiful young woman. You have to always encourage yourself to try to look further, to try to see that if you are conditioned by an image just for a minute, you're convinced that this is a young woman. Imagine being conditioned over years. So taking a step back and thinking about how a customer might be viewing your business in a different way than you may be viewing your business. So that's really the lens that we're looking for. We then, once we have a sense of our customer's lens, we will then add in content that we think would effectively serve that particular user persona into our user persona spreadsheet. So that's the final step of that user persona spreadsheet is we say content that we will send those users that we think they will find relevant based on the lens they were looking at our company through. And then the final step of setting our goals is creating goals. So we now have these very clear user personas. We have a sense of the lens they're looking at our company through. And then we actually use a process called OKRs to set our goals for the quarter. This was a process that was originally created by Intel and then later introduced in 1999 to Google. At Google today, every single member at Google uses OKRs to track their performance over the year and over each quarter. And so we have adopted this on our team and we've somewhat retrofitted it. So we think of those user personas and then we think of our goal for the quarter. And so our overarching goal for the quarter is put as an objective. Again, we try not to do more than 3 to 5 objectives for a quarter. You can't overload your team and try to execute on 20 different things if you don't have the capacity to do so. So really make sure to have a little bit of focus here. 3 to 5 objectives. And then on the side of each objective, you have key results. And key results are quantifiable measures to track success in hitting that goal. And the point behind that is we can't track success or failure if we can't quantify it, especially in the marketing industry. So always try to have a quantifiable goal in mind. Even if it's just increasing customer satisfaction, you can send out NPS scores and see how that increases or decreases over time and have that as your key result. So we put together our user personas, we have our lens in place, and then we put together our OKRs for the quarter. High level note, we put together these objectives and key results as a company on a yearly basis, and we put them together as individuals on a quarterly basis. So everyone on my team will create their own OKRs. They may overlap slightly, but it's important that everyone take responsibility for their own goals that they're planning on executing on for that quarter. Great, so we now have our goals set. We have a good sense of our destination, so now we can finally start to map out how we're going to get there. And so the next step is building the roadmap, having a sense of over the quarter, how will I get to that destination in mind. Just very high level, what we do is we prioritize out our key results. We put those into a tracking system that is easy to edit over time. This is key, it needs to be easy to edit because you will be editing your goal, you will be editing your plans over time as you acquire more information. We build out a calendar so that we know that we're staying on track. Again, we build this out in Google Sheets so we can edit it at any time. And then we start executing. So once we have a sense of our goals, we have our roadmap built at the beginning of the quarter, then it's kind of the time to just tackle all of those tasks that we've put in place so that we can ultimately reach our goals. And so this is kind of honing in on the nitty-gritty, the daily, how do you on a daily basis start actually reaching those very lofty goals that you've set for yourself. And the key is to be very methodical about being in touch with your team so that everyone knows what everyone else is doing, and being in touch with what you are planning on tackling that week and that day. So the first thing that we do, I've actually retrofitted this also from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I put together, and all my teammates put together, a weekly planner. This is accessible for everyone because it's in our G Suite, so it's again in Google Sheets. You can tell we use G Suite a lot. And so it's important that on a weekly basis, I'm thinking about those user personas and I'm thinking about those goals. Those are my high-level plans that I put together at the beginning of the quarter. That's what I'm driving toward. And then on a weekly basis, I look at those user personas, I look at my goals for those user personas, and then I start to build out my weekly priorities. What am I focusing on this week? So I'll typically pull up my calendar, I think about what I'm executing on this week, what I'm planning on focusing on, and I fill out my weekly priorities on Monday. This is right before our IPM, which is an iterative planning meeting, which is an hour-long meeting with your team where you set your priorities for the week. So everyone is doing this. Everyone is saying, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on this week. You look at your goals, you set your focus for the week, and then that's your plan for the week. On a daily basis, we have a 15-minute daily stand-up. 15 minutes, no more, and the reason why it's called a stand-up, engineers thought of this one, is because no one wants to stand for more than 15 minutes, unless you have a standing desk. So you have a daily stand-up of 15 minutes, and that's when you go over what am I going to tackle today that I'm pulling from my weekly priorities. So again, it's a way of planning, it's a way of making sure that you don't get stuck in the vortex of checking emails constantly. You're really focusing on these big kind of, eat a frog every morning type of analogy, these big tasks that you set for yourself that will get you to your end goals. So none of this would be impactful if you're not measuring your results. You could have a destination in mind, you could have a route set out, and you're going north when you should be heading south. So you need to be able to measure your results to see if you are in fact going in the right direction so that you can correct course if you're not. I'm sure all of you are doing this today with your marketing strategies where you're tracking them, but it's really important to take those times to step back and analyze those results. Analyze the performance, see how it's changed over time, see if you can improve it, see if those changes that you set out for the week before actually improved your performance, and how can you tackle and focus on those things more in the future. Again, we do IPMs. We also run retros. This is also an agile process that we use at Def Method. And it's used for product management, but it's also very effective for making sure your team is running in the right direction. And so what a retro is we draw a ship, much like this, on our whiteboard. I know it's kind of cheesy, but, and then we use sticky notes, and we write down the things that happened that week that moved our project forward. Those stickies go near the sail, they're pushing our ship forward. And then we write down on the sticky tasks or things that dragged us down, that slowed us down, and we put those things near the anchor. Really simple, but it actually does have a huge impact because you then, as a team, can talk about where are you getting stuck, where are the bottlenecks, what can we change so that we're continually moving forward toward our overarching goals. And then finally, the final step is to go back around the circle and do it again, but also implement that feedback that you received so that you ultimately are bettering your strategy, you are bettering the path that you're taking to your end goals. It's okay to be uncertain at the start. That typically means you're going in the right direction, you're trying something new, you're going and trying AI for your marketing strategy. And it's okay to have some uncertainty. It's not okay to learn from those things that you've done in the past. Great, so that's about it. Let me pull up the final. So again, this is our strategy. It again can be retrofitted for your own teams. It's pulling from the Agile approach. And I hope you found it useful. I'll pull up the resources now if you guys want any of those resources. That's it. Thank you. Any questions? I guess I'll turn this down. Oh, that's an easy throw.
Okay, so it's working. I'm just curious, our company's having a huge push to, they call it free up your energy and reduce the number of meetings we're having. How do you find this? You've got your Monday meeting every day, you got a 15-minute, and then there's a Friday you do your retros?
Yep.
Do you find that that's too much meeting, taken away from your work, or do you think it should be spread out more than that?
Yeah, so I think it depends on team size, and the key to have these meetings be successful is to make sure that they're not, if they get just too big, they get somewhat difficult to manage, and certain people can take up too much time, and it doesn't relate to the project that another person is on, so they're zoned out. So what we've found is that we try to keep these meetings very focused on only having the team members in the room who are highly engaged in the project at the time. So, for example, if we're having a marketing stand-up, we don't need the president of Deaf Method present. Now, he needs to be present when we're creating our OKRs, because that's our overarching goal, but it's really, I think the key is to make sure that it is a group that is highly interconnected on a daily basis, so that if you're saying something to me and we're on the same team, I need to know what you're executing on today, because we need to be aligned. And if there isn't alignment, or if there isn't too much connection between my work and yours, then it doesn't make sense for us to be doing a daily stand-up.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yep. Can you toss the box over that way? Thank you.
Okay, so you measure results, and then later you said that you continuously track quantifiable results. So how do you measure that? And how do you determine quantifiable? I'm just curious what process you use to do that.
Yeah, and quite honestly, in a B2B business, it can be very difficult because our cost per acquisition is much higher. Our average project size is much higher than if I were selling clothing, for example. But it's the way that we quantify it is we have a couple different buckets that we put a price point on. So we'll say that a lead, we're targeting a certain dollar amount per lead. We're targeting a certain dollar amount per client that we speak with their product about. That's a warm lead for us. And then we put a different dollar amount on a closed lead. Because there is a lot of lead up for us, our funnel, there's a lot of lead up between meeting someone, learning about their product, and ultimately working with them.
All right, thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? All right, great. Thank you so much, guys.